Tonight we saw Freaky.
It turns out
Where am I?
I didn't get killed.
Oh my God, why do I sound like that?
I woke up in the killer's body.
The Blissfield Butcher strikes again.
The new movie from Blumhouse Productions starring Vince Vaughn. Connor, what is the plot of Freaky?
Freaky, of course, stars Vince Vaughn and a bunch of kids that nobody's ever heard of. And they basically follows the plot of Freaky Friday, mixed with some Friday the 13th elements. We have a girl, Millie, who switches with the killer via a dagger sacrifice thing. And then basically she goes about trying to convince the people in her life that she, as the killer, is actually Millie, and tries to switch her body back while the killer is killing a bunch of people in her body. That's basically it. So Aiden, what did you think of Freaky?
That's pretty fun. It's not much more than that. It's got a couple good kills. They front load a couple really good ones where he shoves the wine bottle down a dude's neck and then shatters it.
I thought most of the kills in this movie were pretty good, honestly.
I thought they were all pretty good. They front loaded the really, really good ones though. Yeah, I like Vince Vaughn. He does a good job as scary murderer man, and he does a good job as 16-year-old girl. Yeah, it's a pretty simple movie. You can probably guess everything that happens. It's Freaky Friday the 13th. Probably the original title before they realized they couldn't get away with that.
That is like a literal fucking, that's some fucking...
Even takes place on Friday the 13th.
Right. No, it definitely was called Freaky Friday the 13th, and then...
Yeah, it's you know, got a couple fun kills, a little fun action, kind of goofy, silly, comedy-ish thing. It's
I liked that the kills were very Tom Savini-like, where we had like the woodshop teacher getting cut in half, fucking chainsaw killing. Of course, the wine bottle was great.
Lots of gore.
There were a lot of really good kills in this movie. And, you know, Vince Vaughn's character is definitely reminiscent of Jason. He wears somewhat of a hockey mask looking thing. That's clearly the inspiration. And then you have 16-year-old girl who plays the 16-year-old nerdy in her shell girl archetype. A little played out, but definitely an interesting definitely an interesting spin. It feels like almost some like weird, like if they made like a Friday the 13th 18 or whatever, you know, and rather than going weird with it and sending Jason, well, this was pretty weird, but rather than like sending Jason to space and shit, if they just kept going, like
Eventually they would have run into this idea.
Yeah, eventually they would have run into this idea. I mean, essentially,
That's
it's not
effectively
100% different from what we saw in like the Final Friday, where Jason's the slug man that like possesses people as a giant worm. A little bit different, but same spirit, I suppose.
Yeah. All the performances are pretty good. Shot fine. Not shot particularly special, but you know, all the main characters are likable enough. Plenty of assholes to murder.
Right.
It's a slasher movie. You know what you're getting when you go into it. It's a good slasher movie.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I thought the main characters were pretty well fleshed out in this movie. Obviously, like the cannon fodder kind of fell into the archetypes of slasher movies. You got the douchey jock, date rapers, gangbangers. You know, you got the horny teens and shit, and a lot of those characters are kind of two-dimensional, but it almost felt like it was by design because the rest of the movie was kind of self-aware and tried to do stuff with the characters. Like you had the alcoholic mom. They kind of explored how she was dealing with the fallout of like her husband dying. You had the cop sister, how she's reacting to the father dying. I mean, it's pretty bare bones. I'm not gonna say it's like a deep character study, but as far as slasher movies go, it had some warrant to it. And, you know, for like basically intending to be like a Friday the 13th, you know, it kind of also had some like Scream DNA in there, it felt like, where it was kind of self-aware and kind of making fun of the slasher genre while also being somewhat of a love letter. I think Scream played it a little more straight-faced in a way. I feel like, you know, it doesn't take the same approach as Scream, but it obviously made like somewhat comedy elements and was making fun of very specifically Friday the 13th tropes over even standard slasher movie tropes. Although, you know, like the town being some stupid generic name, like, I don't remember what the town was called exactly, like Joyfield or whatever the fuck it was called.
The Blissfield Butcher.
But like, pretty clearly a play on like the generic slasher movie archetypes. And I guess like the town being in fear kind of was Friday the 13th. But I liked how, or Nightmare on Elm Street. But I definitely liked how they played with like these modern teens are like Instagramming it, trying to get clout off of the fucking,
That's pretty good.
off of the fucking girl who almost got murdered and shit. And it definitely felt like, in a way, kind of, even though it was poking fun and not entirely realistic, also kind of felt like, you know, somewhat understanding of how youth culture actually would probably react to something like this, where they're like, whoa, people were getting murked, and taking Instagram photos and shit with the people who almost got killed. It was an interesting parody. I wouldn't necessarily call it like the same genre as Scream, I guess. I guess it's two very different approaches, but it is kind of homogenizing and making fun of the slasher genre in a way.
Yeah, a little bit, I suppose. It felt more like a straight comedy slasher rather than like a mockery of slashers.
Right.
What are you doing?
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't like go as far as to compare it. I mean, I guess it almost feels like it's somewhere in between like Scream and Scary Movie or something. Not necessarily. I thought the comedy in this movie was fairly clever.
Yeah.
But I got a few good laughs, and I thought, I don't remember his name, Milo or whatever, the gay friend. I thought, you know, he could have easily went into cringe territory, but I thought he had a lot of the funniest moments.
Yeah, I like that.
Her best, the girlfriend woman wasn't anything that special, but yeah, no, there's definitely funny moments. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's like a fucking slapstick parody like Scream. I guess it does in a way have parody, but it also has a level where it takes its plot seriously, so I almost dare say it's not entirely parody. And I think if it fell entirely into the parody genre, they could probably call it Freaky Friday the 13th, but I think the reason they just called it Freaky was because they were treading the line between comedy and something somewhat serious. In a lot of like the vein of, if you watch like Happy Death Day, I think that's very, obviously it's the same director and stuff, and I would say it leans more into the parody, but the less like serious tone to it, like homogenizing the less serious tone to the slasher.
Yeah, it was
idea.
mostly serious, but a little bit of a weird take on it.
It was interesting for sure.
So, would you recommend Freaky?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend Freaky. I thought it was pretty good. I feel like, especially if you have like an appreciation of the 80s slasher genre, and especially if you dig Friday the 13th, you're gonna get a lot out of it. Obviously, Vince Vaughn plays not exactly a Jason Voorhees, but how his mannerisms and stuff. It's not like a direct like parody, like we stole Jason Voorhees. There's a little different there, but definitely inspired by Jason the Killer. And then you have these kills that were very, like, obviously whoever made those had Tom Savini in mind when making them, because they felt very practical. They felt really well done. Like, obviously they had a budget behind them more, and obviously like these days you can get away with showing more of the kill, but it felt like it kind of took those very workman type, very crafty kills, not necessarily like super high budget, and actually put something of a budget behind them, so it was kind of a love letter to that. I thought a lot of the humor in this movie landed. You know, there were some jokes I didn't particularly find funny, but Nothing that I felt like went in a cringy territory, and I definitely laughed a good few times during this movie, which, to be honest, doesn't happen much. And especially I guess if you like Happy Death Day 2, this feels like somewhat of a continuation of that guy's work. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily feel like it like connects to Happy Death Day per se in story, but it definitely feels like where the director wanted to go and kind of continued and expanded on his like horror slasher ideas, I guess. So Aiden, would you recommend Freaky?
Yeah, I'd recommend Freaky. It's good. It's funny. It's weird, and there ain't shit else out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, out of this year, bro, it's probably in the top 5 by default. You know, might have made my top 10 or 15 in a normal year, but this year, bro, it's actually making competition. It's strong.
Right up there with Tenet.
It's a heavy competitor. It's a heavy competitor this year. No, but it's actually charming. I really liked like Vince Vaughn and stuff. It was good. So this is gonna be our new set. We're probably gonna have to tweak the angles and shit a little bit, but this is what we got now. So fuck you guys. Also, I'm gonna do a review of. Well, I've written a review of Freaky Friday 2018, which we put on just by coincidence one day. And it happened to work out pretty well, so that's probably going to come out either next week or maybe this week. I don't have Wi-Fi at my new apartment yet, so it might take a while for any of my Why It Sucks to come out, but they'll come around, whatever. Alright, bye.
Bye.